Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener-supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. We're so glad you joined us this time. I am excited to introduce to you, for those who don't know, Matt Pryor. Matt is a singer-songwriter. He has a very long career with several different bands and a solo career. And so I am super excited and privileged to have Matt. Matt, welcome to Spirituality Adventures.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Tell us.
Spirituality is an adventure. I guess that makes sense, but it sounds like religious rock climbing or something like that, like spiritual adventures. It's an interesting way to think of it.
Yeah, in fact, I am a rock climber.
There you go.
I've been rock climbing since I was like 16, and I'm a mountain biker, and I kind of love adventure, nature kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I love spirituality of all types. And so I thought, it's kind of an adventure to explore spirituality and all the different types and shapes and forms of spirituality that are out there. So I just thought, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you for having me.
You bet. You bet. Well, give us a little bit of your, where you're from, where you grew up, that kind of stuff, and a little bit of your background.
I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. I was born at St. Luke's. I attended St. Peter's Elementary School and Bishop Miege for high school, with a few different forays into public school and art school. And then been playing in bands since I was 15, and, started the Get Up Kids in 1995 and just started touring the world after that. And then after about 5 years of that, I started doing stuff on my own, more like singer-songwriter kind of stuff. And then that evolved into, when my kids were born, I did a couple of children's music records, and that, leads us to now me being holed up in my garage during a pandemic, talking on a religious podcast.
Yeah. Semi-religious, right? We try not to be religious. We try to be spiritual, but not religious. How's that?
That's fine.
That's work.
Call it whatever you want.
Well, hey, so you grew up in like a Catholic home, then it sounds like you were sent to Catholic schools?
Yeah, right? I went to Catholic school. My mom's still a practicing Catholic. My dad's never really been much of anything. But yeah, my brother and I went to Catholic school for most of our childhood.
Was that a positive experience?
No, not at all. It was hell. Some friends of two of the other guys in my band just went to their 25th high school reunion.
Yeah.
And it was at Olathe South.
Okay.
And they apparently had a really good time, but it kind of came up of like, the only way I would ever go back to my high school would be to plant a bomb, which is kind of macabre, but it's, I did not have a positive experience there.
Yeah. I think of that, Death Cab for Cutie song sometimes about, the nuns who,
we
used the rulers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was more, we're post-Vatican II, so that's like more my mom's generation, but we had it was more just rampant homophobia that was like, and I'm not queer, but like, it was just sort of, that kind of like super jockey, homophobic meathead sort of, I don't know, just very bigoted and misogynist and homophobic. And it was just being a young weirdo, into punk rock. I've been writing a lot of these things down lately. I don't know what I'm going to do with these stories, but the thing that saved me in high school was that my one friend was a budding sociopath and everyone was afraid of him. So they didn't mess with me as much once he and I started hanging out because they were worried he was going to like shiv them with a knife in his boot.
Holy crud. Wow. So how did you get into music? Did you come from a musical family, or when did you?
Well, my dad played the accordion. That was when he was in high school. But no, not really. I mean, my folks like music and they listen to music around the house, but I was a young metalhead in grade school and in early high school, getting into like Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and that kind of stuff. And from that and becoming, kind of obsessed with that world, leads me to like thrash, which leads me to like Metallica, which then leads me to punk, which is like the Misfits and stuff. And then that leads me into like a whole another world of underground music that has nothing to do with metal. But that was the jumping off point for me. That was my gateway drug.
What was a guitar your first instrument?
Actually, drums were my first instrument. But then I quickly learned that it's hard to write songs on the drums.
Yeah, so. I wouldn't know. I'm strictly a fan. Like I can't sing on tune. I can't play anything, but I love music. So, and I've always hung around musicians a lot for some reason. I know why, because I love it. But anyway, so what took you into the punk scene? Just who would you listen to at first? And
I mean, so it's like Misfits, Bad Religion, and then getting into like DC hardcore, like Minor Threat and into Fugazi and all that kind of stuff. And then, that kind of like Black Flag, Minutemen sort of work ethic. The Descendants were a really big part of my young listening experience. But then also like I met my wife when we were in high school, and she was really into like The Cure specifically, but like kind of like gothy alternative stuff of like the late 80s and 90s. And so listened to a lot of that. And somewhere along the line, I got into the Pixies, and Pixies are one of my all-time favorite bands. So.
Yeah, fun stuff. So you put your first band together. Like, did you record with that first band? Was that the Decoder Ring?
No, the first band I was in was called Take a Joke. And I played drums and guitar. The guitarist and I would switch back and forth between drums and guitar. And we put out a cassette that was called Bicycles for Afghanistan, which is a Kurt Vonnegut reference. And it was just, I don't know, weird proto, post-punk kind of. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just a bunch of guys who didn't know how to play their instruments very well. And then I got into kind of a noise rock, like avant-garde band that was called a Secular Theme, actually. And we all wore suits like we were in Reservoir Dogs and made a lot of noise. And I used the guitar more as like a weapon of torture rather than something to write melodies on. But it was a fun, like energetic live band. And then I started getting more into like pop punk. And that's where Secret Decodering came around. And that's when I first started playing with Jim, who's the guitar player in the Get Up Kids, the other guitar player in the Get Up Kids. And then when that band sort of split, he and I wanted to start something that wasn't quite so pop punk. And we recruited Rob, our bass player, who's been friends with Jim since kindergarten. And then we had Nathan, who was Jim's friend from art school. And then Nathan didn't work out, so we hired Rob's brother, Ryan, to play drums. And then we recorded our first record in 1997.
Yeah. So I'll just mention it. Some people listening might know Nathan Shea, and he played drums at the church that I started called Vineyard Church. And he is a friend of mine to this day. We really connected around bicycle stuff. I got him started on riding a bike, and then he started getting competitive and became a good bike rider. But yeah, Nate said to say hey, and I got, I got my education. We talked quite a bit about his early days there in the Get Up Kids and art school. And I guess you guys, when you decided to tour, he was not into that.
He was going to do an internship with a sculptor, I think, and we were dead set on going on tour. And so it just wasn't, we were at different places in life, had different priorities. And so.
Yeah. Well, so the Get Up Kids, man, quite a history there with the Get Up Kids. You guys have been, for some of the audience that doesn't know the Get Up Kids, which there might be, there's certainly, my dad listens, he's 86, so he won't know the Get Up Kids, but this is how would you describe it? A pop punk band?
What does your dad listen to?
I grew up listening to Johnny Cash.
Okay.
And the Statler Brothers. Got it. And gospel quartet stuff.
Okay. How do you guys feel about George Jones?
So I know of George Jones. I haven't listened to a ton of his music, but he's considered pretty classic country for sure, right?
I'm getting really interested going back a while now with like the history of country music. And I'm finding more and more, there's this really great podcast I like called Cocaine and Rhinestones. It's about the history of 20th century country music. And I'm really starting to find a lot of parallels between the scene that we came up in and the way country music of that, specifically of like the 60s, is where I'm thinking of, just where it's like you're doing something that's really, really emotionally raw and something that's really, really sincere, and it does have an audience, but it never gets mainstream success. Mm-hmm. And that is very similar to what our trajectory was, is that we did something that was really, just very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was very genuine, and it was very truthful, and it spoke to a lot of people in that same sort of way. But it just we were never on the radio, we were never in magazines, we were never on the charts or anything like that. But
for your world, it was pretty. You guys had a big audience that mm-hmm. was out there. You started touring in what, 95? 96?
97, actually. We formed in 95, put out the 7-inch, the 45 that we did with Nathan in 96, and then our first record in 97.
97. Your album, Something to Write Home About, came out in 99. Mm-hmm. And that one you toured not only in America, but in other countries as well. Is that right?
Yeah. On that run, we went to Japan for the first time, Australia for the first time, Europe we went to Europe a lot. We go to Europe a lot. We're going next summer. And then that's kind of expanded even more. Like we played in Malaysia a couple of times. We've gone to South America, Mexico. So, yeah,
man, you've been around the world with this stuff. That's pretty mm-hmm. cool. Love that. James DeWeese, how did you guys connect?
He was in another local band that was like a kind of hardcore math. I don't know how to explain it. They're called Coalesce, and he was their drummer. And we just kind of started hanging out together. And then he started living with Rob and Ryan, our drummer and bass mm-hmm. player. And he was just around the house all the time playing piano. And it turns out he's this savant of a piano player. And we wanted to add keyboards after our first record because we were of the stuff we were listening to. And so we're just like, well, why don't you just do it? And then he was in the band for 20 years.
All right. And then
he's not in the band anymore, though.
Okay. But you have done a project or two with him as well. Is that right? Kind of not with the Get Up Kids, but
he does this thing called Reggie and the Full Effect, which is kind of a one-man thing, it's a one-man band kind of that I've sang on and played bass on, singing harmonies and stuff like that.
Okay. And he has, who is he playing with now?
I don't know.
You've lost touch with him?
Yeah.
Okay. I was noticing he'd played with a bunch of different bands that that like My Chemical Romance and I don't know what else, but pretty big history with him.
When you're a keyboard player who can learn an entire record in an hour, you're a hot commodity.
Wow. That's a gift.
Yeah.
That's a gift.
He's a very, very talented person.
That's amazing. So, when you were touring in Australia with the Get Up Kids, you guys had come out with the Guilt Show, your fourth album.
Mm-hmm.
And, was that a time in your life when you'd started your family, like your kids you had your first kid at home? And
yeah, my daughter was 2 years old and my oldest son was about 3 months away from being born. And I was in a really dark headspace about leaving and I didn't want to tour. I needed a break just to be at home. And, ultimately, same sort of deal with Nathan. It's like that's not what everybody else wanted, but it was killing me. So I just said, well, then I'm not gonna do this. And then that's when the band broke up. And then we only broke up for 3 years, so it's kind of like, well, if we had just taken a year off, probably could have avoided that. But man, I'm gonna turn this air conditioner off. It keeps cycling back on. Hold on.
All right.
I can hear the difference in the audio.
Yeah, I can't hear it on this end, but all right.
Now it does feel like 105 outside, so if I get too hot, I may have to turn it.
Oh gosh, that's crazy. I rode my bike Saturday, Sunday, and it just, it's just like riding in a warm, wet blanket, breathing underwater or something like that. Welcome to Missouri in the summer, right?
And Kansas. Yeah.
You're in Lawrence. How long have you lived in Lawrence?
20 years, 21 years.
Oh, wow. Long history. So you took a break, and is that when you started the New Amsterdams?
No, I started the New Amsterdams in 2000. That first record came out in 2000. And that was because I wanted to do different stuff than what Get Up Kids were doing. I had gotten more, I was moving in my own taste kind of further away from punk and indie rock and what that scene was becoming, and more into singer-songwriters, like Steve Earle and Richard Buckner. And I wanted to try that just to see if I could do something that wasn't so dependent on being incredibly loud. And so that's when I started New Amsterdam.
And have you toured? You've done several albums with them, right? Mm-hmm. And toured with them as well. Mm-hmm. And was that a 3-man band, or?
It was a rotating cast, up to 5 when we had a pedal steel player. But it was primarily, it ended up being, it was scalable. Okay. Anything from just me to a trio to, we did one show here in Lawrence that was we have a string section and a grand piano and a horn section and the whole 9.
Wow. So. Yeah. I like, I love your solo career stuff.
Thank you.
I've focused mostly on your more recent stuff with them, but kind of want to still do just a little bit of your history. At some point you did a couple of children's albums, which I found interesting. The Terrible Twos And was it 2 full albums that you did?
Mm-hmm. 2 full,
The Terrible
Jersey,
Twos, and what's
Jersey
the other one?
the Giant was one record, and If You Ever See an Owl was another record.
Okay. Yeah, so
Played a handful of shows with Terrible Twos. We played the kids stage at Lollapalooza one year.
oh, nice.
That was weird.
So for the parents out there listening, yeah, check that out for your kids.
It doesn't suck.
So let's talk a little. So you guys reunited as the Get Up Kids, did a reunion tour for the Something to Write Home About, and then you've done at least 4 more albums since then with the Get Up Kids. Is that right?
2 EPs and 2 full lengths.
Okay.
Since we got back together, but
Okay.
we've actually been reunited now longer than we were together in the first place.
Okay.
So we celebrated our 25th anniversary last year, kind of just taking the 3 years we were broken up, counting it as a as a hiatus, even though we didn't think it was at the time.
Yeah. I love the last album, Problems, is one I was able to listen to and really love the theme there.
We're really proud of that.
Yeah. I thought, so I've been through quite a bit of therapy here in my life over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that for me, mental health is kind of related to a spiritual journey, in terms of, like, when I think about spirituality, I think about connection to self, connection to others, mm-hmm. and connection to something greater than all of us, maybe, whatever that might be. And so, I don't know. I think the mental health journey, when we're trying to learn more about ourselves, more about how to connect with others, is a spiritual journey. For me, it has been anyway.
I could see that.
So, in your Problems album with the Get Up Kids, I just noticed a lot of places in the writing there where there's a whole lot of reflection going on.
Yeah. I mean, there's always been a lot of reflection in our lyrics. This one in particular, though, is coming from a place of being reflective in your 40s and having a lot more, like, knowledge of what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and what your, limitations are. And, because I've been in therapy a bunch. I do a lot of meditation. I don't know that I would call myself a spiritual person, just because it's hard for me to separate that from my trauma of my Catholic upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand. I find something similar to that in a lot of things outside of any kind of, like, higher power, like in music and in my kids and in gardening and cooking and in podcasting. Actually, I find it quite a lot in that. But yeah, it makes sense to me that,
Yeah. So what is that like when you say you've found a lot of that in podcasting? What does that, describe that for me?
It's a medium where you can be completely honest, and you can also just be off the cuff. And I think that encourages people to kind of forget that they're in a public medium, and they just become much more open. And it seems to be a medium where it's kind of going back to, I think maybe Mark Maron maybe set the tone for it, of just, like, trying to get people to, like, talk about the difficulties of things and mental health. I think is a really, really, really big thing that I grew up, having that being, like, something that you suppress. And I really think that that's really suffocating and really damaging to people. And so I try to be an advocate for acknowledging that we all have problems, and we all need to take care of ourselves. And sometimes that just means putting up a boundary,
Mm-hmm.
But so, yeah, I try to be to talk about mental health as often as possible, because I think it's also one of those things where as a musician, you're not supposed to complain about your job, because everybody just goes like, oh, you just get paid, money for nothing and the chicks for free is like, it's not really like that. It really, the only aspect of that is sort of like big and bombastic is the hour you're on stage, but then the other 364 days and 23 hours, you're kind of alone a lot of the time. And so, yeah, it's a bit of a roller coaster.
I think one of your songs reflected on that aloneness. I'm trying to remember but when you're alone, your perspective gets a little skewed sometimes when you're isolated, I guess. Isolation, mm-hmm. I think, can play negatively into our mental health,
Yeah, I do agree with that. Hang on. Me personally, I have this like huge fear of abandonment. And so I'm actually actively working now to be more comfortable being alone, like in a healthy way, like not in a
right.
Not in a hermit living in the woods kind of way, but just like, I think that's something where I take solace in podcasts too, because it is sort of like that in like books on tape, it's just like sort of like keeping me company when I don't have anybody to talk to.
Yeah. I'm curious what your meditation practices are. Do you mind sharing along those lines?
It's nothing crazy. I just use the Headspace app, and I try to do at least 10 to 20 minutes a day of just like, and then during stressful times, maybe more than once a day. If I know that if I'm getting keyed up, that I need to like if I can feel myself getting some sort of manic, I don't know that I get that far, but, or if I feel myself getting really, really angry, then I'll go and do 10 minutes and,
mm-hmm.
bring myself back down.
Yeah.
Which is something I suffer from anxiety and more recently depression, but I don't know how much of it was pandemic related. The depression part, the anxiety I've had my whole life and didn't know what it was until one of my kids had kind of an issue with that in middle school. And they were explaining to me how they were feeling. And I was like, that's just normal. And they were like, no, it's not. It's anxiety. And
yeah, so I think that's what was my, I have a racing brain, and I have a hard time shutting my brain down. And
meditation is good for that too.
Exactly. And a part of my insomnia problem, I think, was anxiety. I think I just had this general anxiety disorder that I'd had since a kid. Like my parents would take me out when I was a little kid and I'd get so nervous I couldn't eat because I was in a public place and stuff like that. And so I've had to go back and rethink my relationship to anxiety and how that affected me, and my insomnia that got me into trouble with the Xanax and alcohol stuff. And so while I was in rehab, I was introduced to a meditation style that came more out of the Buddhist tradition. Mm-hmm. And it's been incorporated into a couple of different therapy models, the DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and CBT and ACT. There's a bunch of different therapies now that have incorporated some of that. I got introduced to that style of meditation. So when I got out, I connected with, there's a mindfulness meditation group in Kansas, or in the Kansas City area. It's called Midwest Mindfulness Alliance. And
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So I go to a group, and I actually did an interview with one of the teachers from that group on my podcast. But what I found is that learning to do focus on my breathing, do a body scan, actually pay attention to what my feelings and thoughts are and what's coming up, and then to use that body scan, the breathing, to just explore creatively and openly what's going on and why my mind is racing and what I'm thinking about, what I'm afraid of, what's fear, what's this, all these negative emotions I used to just suppress, try to actually listen to them, hear what's going on. Anyway, that's been actually really helpful for me. So I try to do that every morning, and I feel terrible at it. Like I suck at it, but
that's part of the process. I used to do yoga a lot. And it was always this thing of like and I think that mental health and meditation are the same way, where it's just like, you never finish it. Like you never go, I finished yoga. I've completed all my coursework for yoga. It's like, no, it's a maintenance thing. And the same thing with like meditation. It's just like, it's not like you take your pill and your headache goes away. It's like, this is just it's an ongoing thing, which I think is something that I think people are more open to when they get older. But I guess maybe that's just the experiences that I've seen,
Yeah, I definitely become an advocate of things that I feel are healthy and holistic, and, and so many of these issues, like when I grew up, we just didn't talk about it.
Same. Yeah.
You didn't want to admit that you needed a therapist, or, like I didn't go to my first psychiatrist till I was 55.
I had to, when my parents got divorced, I had to go to one when I was a kid, and I was just like, fuck this, just like I was in 6th grade. It was just like, no way, I'm not talking to you. I had a point. What was I going to say? We don't talk about mental health as much as we should. And I only recently am learning some of the secrets of my family's history and my family's mental health history that was just never talked about, to the point of where it's just like, there's a history of bipolar in my family that I didn't know about until someone got arrested on a manic episode and got a diagnosis. And they're like, oh yeah, your grandfather tried to hang himself in a mental institution. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, this would be good to know before I start having children, be on the lookout for, this and this,
Isn't that crazy though? But
it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And it's just like we're all imperfect vessels. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, it's just best to be like, to support people and to like help them be the best that they can be, not to just, have one mold of person that you're trying to like force everybody into that particular mold. Even the people who are quote unquote perfect are fucked in the head too.
I agree.
Sorry, I'm swearing.
I tried to be one of those people and it didn't work.
Yeah.
I kind of blew up. Yeah. Well, I think there's, like the generation of my dad, and then my generation grew up, if you had an emotional problem, you didn't want to talk about it. You didn't want to admit it. You wanted to hide it. And then the hiding is not good. And so, yeah, I think we're in a whole new phase of helping people be healthy because we can talk about it.
Yeah. It's still a tricky thing for like my kids' generation is definitely totally comfortable talking about mental health. I think there's still some hangups with even just my generation, like to the point where it's just even been like, it's almost like having to just be like, I'm, because when you're in a band and you're in a situation, whether it's a show or whatever, you kind of have to be on the same page. And sometimes when you're not in the same place as everybody else is mentally, it's hard to like be part of that group. And I have to sometimes be like, look, I am here for work, but I need to go here in the corner and be by myself until it's time for us to go to work. And then I will be 100% with you. But like, I can't go out day drinking with you all day and then be expected to sing, like it's just like, so I need, to have my own space for my own mental health.
Yeah. So, I heard, that one of your kids is in a band as well. Is that right?
Yes.
What's that like? You having this long history with bands, road practice, band life.
It's cool. I'm very proud of them. They are very, and I completely admire this and understand it, are very adamant about forging their own path with it and doing it. Like they don't want any handouts from me or from any, like I give them advice but they very much want to like do their own thing and not just be like,
How old are they?
19. My kids are 19, 17, and 14.
Okay. And are the two oldest in a band together?
The oldest in the band.
Okay. What style?
Kind of indie punk, very like queer, positive, femme, it's good. It's angry young teenage kids playing pop music. So it's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Is it, have they recorded anything?
They're starting to now.
Okay. Have they picked a name?
Yes, but I'm not supposed to, per their request. I'm just going to say that they're a very good punk band.
There you go. Well, hey, once you can say something, I'll want to hear about that. So
I think once they're a little bit more established in their own right, they'll feel more comfortable with being kind of public about it.
Right. Well, cool.
Like they recently like came up with like a stage name so that it's not like, so they want to stay away from any nepotism.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good stuff. So let's talk a little bit about your solo career. I haven't been able to listen to all of the solo albums that you've done, but I listened a lot to Momento
Mori.
Yeah, Memento Mori, and then just the one you put out last year, the EP you put out last year, Mayday Companion. So love that style. Was your earlier solo stuff in a similar vein, like the stuff you did?
Some of it's stripped down like that. Both of those are pretty stripped down. Mm-hmm. Some of it's a bit more orchestrated. Actually, that's not entirely true. The solo record I did before Memento Mori, I had a band and was more of like a rock record. But the other ones have been more stripped down, either just me or minimal instrumentation.
Yeah, good stuff.
It's weird because I kind of think of the New Amsterdams as my solo project as well. So I was just thinking about, because some New Amsterdam stuff that's pretty heavily orchestrated, and but that's not what you're talking about.
Yeah. I was thinking of the stuff that's under Matt Pryor's your name. So Shangri-La. I'd like for us to maybe close with, we'll play that song at the end of this podcast or something like that. But if we can get an audio file on that. But I love that song.
Thanks. That was actually, so that whole EP is all stuff that was written for a record called Mayday that didn't make the cut. Even though that one in particular was one that I especially liked. I think it ultimately didn't make the cut. I don't know why. Sometimes you write a song and then you wait too long and you forget that you like it as much as you do, and you're just kind of sick of it. And I think that may have been the case with that one. So that's why it didn't make it on the record.
Okay. Give me the final refrain where you're talking about the caller of the call and execute the letter of the law. Give me that whole refrain there at the end.
I don't even remember. Hang on. I'm going to Google my own lyrics.
Yeah.
Shangri-La lyrics. Lyrics not available. Okay, come on, internet.
It's about a relationship.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is it's kind of not. It's sort of. If I remember correctly, because the song was written a long time ago.
Okay.
That it's sort of a what's the word I want to say? Kind of a catch-all relationship song. Like it's not about any. I can't find the lyrics for it. It's not about anything in particular. It's just sort of about two people going on a journey. You know, I kind of.
What does it say there? I won't be late.
I won't be late. I don't think that it's really
LATE. I won't be late. Yeah. You got to find the caller of the call.
I think it's just kind of a general, kind of like concept of searching, and it's sort of like not necessarily searching for anything in particular, and maybe not even knowing what you're searching for, but kind of wanting to be open. You know, okay, so I've always been in favor of like whenever I have a darkness, whenever I go through periods where I'm like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I try to remember that it will eventually come to me. I just have to keep my ears open and my mind open, and I guess my heart open to when something gets presented. And so sometimes what I do is I put a lot of balls in a lot of things in motion in the hopes that one of them will turn into something that then I can then steer my focus into that one thing. And so I think that song is sort of like just a general idea of you're trying to find this mythical place. You're starting this journey. You're in this relationship. You're going on a voyage, and that you have to be open to the universe or whatever to kind of like help guide that experience. And so it's pretty vague, but it's really about searching, I think.
Yeah, that's good. What about the line, as I say, don't you wait to execute the letter of the law? Is that
might just rhyme.
Okay.
I don't know if that necessarily means.
Yeah. Well, I just, it's kind of like this couple sets out on a journey, but it's kind of like they're bound to not make it. But then there's this
I had that line and that melody, the two lovers fail, two lovers sail doomed to fail. Like I tried using it in a couple of different songs. Cause I was just like, oh, that's clever. That rhymes. Yeah. And, that was the one that ended up in.
Yeah. It kind of, I don't know, it caught my attention a little bit. I had a metaphor that kind of came to my head in my own life about, like my life kind of being a wooden ship and it crashes against the rocks. And, I'm paddling to try to keep my head above water and not drown. This is my recent experience, right? And I'm kind of trying to grab pieces of wood and put it back together again and see if I can, stay afloat. And it's kind of, but I don't know. Anyway, it just. But
I would to prolong that metaphor. Like, there's a lot of different ways to stay afloat. Including just like relaxing your body and allowing yourself to float. You don't necessarily have to rebuild the same ship that already broke,
right.
in order to float. Definitely. You could end up on the shore and find a whole new tree and cut it down and make a whole new boat.
Exactly. And you don't know where it's going to take you. right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever keeps you afloat, you're not sure where it's going to go and where it's going to take you and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But you do have to keep listening to what the world is telling you, and then also keep moving forward with something. You know what I mean?
I do.
It's what's that old story about, like, someone's on top of a house in a flood and a boat comes along and they're like, hey, get in the boat. And he's like, no, God will save me. And then a helicopter comes along and it's like, get in the helicopter. It's like, oh no, God will save me. And then, the person drowns and gets to heaven and it's like, why didn't you save me? And he's like, God's like, I sent a boat, I sent a helicopter. Like,
what else do I do?
Yeah. You have to be open to, like, I think that's one of the things that was like so difficult for me with I'll just say Catholic dogma, just because that's what my experience is in, is that, like, it's so rigid, and it's so like, we do this one way. And I've gotten into arguments with people who are very religious about, like, we're really all trying to get to the same grocery store. There's just like a lot of different streets you can take to that grocery store, but we're all really trying to get there because that's the nourishment that we need. And some people really think the only way to go to the grocery store is just one street down the middle of the road. Mm-hmm. I just don't agree with that.
Well, it's like, and if you go through any kind of phase of challenging or deconstructing what you were taught, then you're going to hell. And, so like, you can't question or doubt, like, without mortal consequences, right? Or immortal, who knows what kind of, it has this.
It's almost like it's a really great way to control people, right, to make them fear something they don't have any power over.
Yes. So true.
We didn't have as much hell in Catholic school. It was more like,
it's just a long trip through purgatory.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember, because I'm just like, I remember like all of my Protestant friends would be like, yeah, like scared of going to hell. And I was just kind of like, well, I think hell probably sucks, but I don't remember like, like being as like terrified of it. But
yeah, it's interesting. I reread after I got out of rehab, Dante's Inferno, mm-hmm. and it's an allegory of different levels of hell, mm-hmm. and then purgatory, and then paradise. And the interesting thing is that it starts off by saying that, midway through my life, I was in a wood and it was dark and I lost my way. And those are the opening lines. It's basically like a midlife crisis, mm-hmm. that he then allegorizes. And the last level of hell is betrayal, abandonment, issues, so I kind of, because I went through like a 3/4 life crisis, and I was kind of like, oh crap, that's me, and that's it's kind of like allegories for the darker parts of my life anyway. That's how I kind of looked at it. But yeah, then I don't like the threat of, like this eternal nature to it. Like in the recovery world, people say, we're not afraid of hell. We've been through it. Yeah.
I have there's the long history of 12-step stuff in my family. And so I'm very like well-versed in like recovery language and practices and stuff. But I did want to say, I do think there is one level of hell that Dante forgot. And it's just one place where someone's trying to tune an analog synthesizer. The whole time, just going it's fucking the worst.
Oh, well, our musician friends out there will appreciate that. Good stuff. I love
or it's a kindergartner playing a cello.
Yeah. Gracefully Bow Before You Fall Apart. That's another song on your Mayday companion.
That's a song. So the whole Mayday thing came out in 2012. The record did, and that is along with that same theme of the whole record is sort of me breaking up with the music industry. And soon after that record came out, I quit everything and went to go work on a farm. So I don't know if you want to call it a midlife crisis or not, but basically it was kind of similar to the same thing of when I quit the band in 2000 and quit the Get Up Kids in 2004. I've just been like, this is not bringing me joy anymore. And so I'm going to bow out before this destroys me. And that's what that song's about.
Yeah. Luck of the Liar. Luck of a Liar.
I don't remember what that song is.
You know,
I think it just sounded cool.
Worst Bet is the Luck of a Liar. Yeah, I got to thinking, about, even like myself being like, don't bet on me. I probably, I don't know. Anyway,
I think if I had to guess, there have been people in my life that have, and it's not a sustainable model forever, but who have like kind of failed upward as far as like, whether it's treating people poorly or lying or, cheating or stealing, and then, continuing to be successful. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's probably what that is supposed to be referenced to.
Right. Right.
As opposed to me, who's trying to be a good person and, only get so far success wise.
Well, you've got an amazing body of literature, of songwriting, and you're obviously, it's obviously comes from your heart, or you wouldn't have stuck at it this long, right? Mm-hmm. Is there something that's in your creative process that you've found works for you? What is your creative process? How do you capture songs? And
it depends on the project, I guess. Every once in a while, if I am in a mood, and I'll just sit down and play guitar and like hum something, and then I'll sing it into my phone and then promptly forget it. And then when it comes time, so like we started writing, we're recording it now. We've written this Get Up Kids EP that is going to come out next year probably. And it was like, okay, we're going to start this EP. And then so go back to my phone, listen through things, and then go, oh, that's cool. Like, let's expand on that. And then I'll write, at least with Get Up Kids, I'll write kind of a, maybe 2 verses and a chorus, and like do an acoustic demo of it, and then bring it in knowing full well that is not what the song's going to sound like. By the time it's done, to the point where people will forget that I initially wrote the song in the first place. And it just, because it has to, in order for it to be a Get Up Kids song, it has to have what I like to say, everyone has to put their stink on it. And, so I tend to come into those situations going like, here is a concept. How do we take this and make it, more unique and more like everybody? Because I have complete trust in all of their abilities that are different from mine. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like,
sure. So it is a group effort.
Yeah. It's a very collaborative.
Yeah.
And then we go through and we like kind of arrange things, and we get like a rough outline. And then when it comes time to record stuff, it's like, okay, so let's play this song together so we can make sure that it all fits. And then we'll get like a track of the drums, and then we'll just mess around with it and like build it and build it and build it. Meanwhile, I've already taken the song home weeks and weeks and weeks and written lyrics and rewritten lyrics and hummed them to myself and recorded them, what we call scratch tracks, where you just have lyrics there for like a place of reference. And then you go back and do like a final take. So I'm in the point right now where I'm waiting for them to do their, like, I'm not going to do a guitar solo. That's not my job, but I already know what I'm going to do with the vocals, because I've already, written them, recorded them. When it comes to like my own stuff, I'm trying something new that I don't know if I want to talk about. I'm trying a different way of writing it. I think I'm going to wait to talk about because I'm not sure if it'll work. And I'm going to try writing in a different way.
Yeah.
I'm making it way more complicated for myself in the hopes of something good coming out of it.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, that group creative process is fun. My favorite book on that is by Ed Catmull, who was, he's the head of, the Disney, he took over Disney now, but, oh gosh, what am I thinking of, Matt? The book? No. Yeah. His book is called Creativity Inc., but he's the founder of Pixar is what I was blanking on Pixar. Okay. And so they have a really fascinating group creative process. And I found that talking to some of the musicians that work in a collaborative effort, there's some parallels and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. Well, man, thanks so much for jumping on here and talking about your music and your history with mental health some. I appreciate that. That's been a big passion of mine. And I find that musicians, move into that with their lyrics. Like that becomes a part of the way they process and heal is write it. Like I journal every morning, and it's part of my mental health practice. But then music is one of my mental health practices, just listening to music. And then I find stuff I love, and it connects with where I'm at emotionally or, mentally, and it does something for me that's healing, Well,
good.
So, so I found some of those songs in yours that I connected with and listened to and went back again and again. And I appreciate your creativity and your sharing it, putting it out there with the world. People don't realize that, when you put that out there, it's a risk, and there's this risk rejection reward kind of dynamic that goes on when we put ourselves out there. So appreciate you doing that.
Well, I appreciate you liking it.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we're going to close with putting one of your songs on there and thank.
They've got a show coming up in Kansas City, or does he want to?
Oh yeah.
Let's plug it. Let's plug your anything coming up, your websites, whatever. Yeah.
You can go to thegetupkids.com, but we're playing a show at Lemonade Park in Kansas City, which is in the parking lot behind Voltaire, down in the stockyard, right by. Well, I'm gonna call it Kemper Arena because that's what I grew up calling it, even though I know it's. What is it now? Is it like? Yeah, but like, what's the arena called now? Like Hy-Vee or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sandstone's still Sandstone to me, and Kemper Arena is still Kemper Arena to me. So,
right.
No matter what our corporate overlords think. So it's down there. It's September 17th. This band, the Whiffs, great Kansas City pop, garage rock, power pop band are opening, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's outside. It's COVID safe. You can order food from Voltaire. It's going to be great.
Nice. September 17th. All right. Good stuff. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining in with Spirituality Adventures. We'll see you next time.
Tell me the tale, tell me the whole story, spin me the yarn, it's been 1,000 years. When do we sail, when do we pull anchor? And don't be afraid, we've only got time to fear. Two lovers sail, but they're doomed to fail. And maybe the water wasn't strong enough, and I'll sail along. It may not be that long till we reach the rocky shores of Shangri-La. You have a ship, you have a strong vessel, you have the skill to take us anywhere. And I got a map, It's more like a strong feeling. And once we set sail, we can go anywhere. So two lovers sail, but they're doomed to fail. Or maybe the water wasn't strong enough. And I'll sail along, it may not be that long till we reach the rocky shores of Shangri-La. I won't be late. I've got to find the caller of the call. But don't you wait to execute the letter of the law. I won't be late, but I've got to find the caller of the call. Don't you wait to execute the letter of the law. I won't be late, but I've got to find the caller of the call. Don't you wait to execute the letter of the law. I won't be late, but I've got to find the caller of the call. But don't you wait, I reach the rocky shores of Shangri-La, Shangri-La.
This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.